Somewhere in your garden right now, there is a cucumber plant covered in flowers, producing absolutely zero cucumbers, and the person growing it is starting to lose their mind. If that sounds familiar, stick around, because that exact plant is about to become the main character of this video. We're following one cucumber, start to finish, through every single thing that can go right and wrong along the way. And trust me, with cucumbers, there's a lot of both. By the end, you'll know exactly what's happening at every stage, including the one plot twist almost nobody warns you about before it happens to them. Here's the journey we're taking. A seed, planted with way more drama than you'd expect for a vegetable that's basically water with a personality. A seedling that needs to survive its own fragile ego. A vine that explodes into growth seemingly overnight. A wave of flowers that, plot twist, don't actually mean cucumbers yet. A pollination crisis. A bitterness scare. A genuinely dangerous pest threat that can kill the whole plant in days. And finally, a harvest, assuming we'll make it there. Let's start at the very beginning. Hey, before we get into this, drop a comment and let me know where you're growing from. Cucumbers behave pretty differently depending on whether you're dealing with a short Midwest summer or long, brutal Texas one. And it genuinely helps to know who's watching. Okay, our cucumber's story starts, like most vegetable stories do, as a seed that looks deeply unimpressive and gives absolutely no indication of the chaos it's about to cause. But before we even get to the seed itself, there's a decision that quietly shapes everything that happens later in this story, and it's worth making on purpose rather than by accident. Which kind of cucumber are we even growing? Slicing cucumbers are the classic kind, the ones you'd put on a sandwich or in a salad, generally growing longer with a thicker skin. Pickling cucumbers are bred shorter and a bit stubbier, with thinner skin and a denser flesh that holds up better in brine, which is exactly why they're the variety of choice for anyone planning to actually pickle their harvest rather than eat it fresh. There are also burpless varieties, bred specifically to contain less of a certain compound that causes digestive discomfort in some people, and, conveniently for our story later, often bred to be naturally less bitter overall too. There's also a structural decision buried in here. Bush varieties stay compact and are well suited to containers or small spaces, while vining varieties sprawl extensively or, if you give them something to climb, grow vertically instead. We touched on this briefly already, but it's worth restating clearly here at the start, because it's a decision that affects practically everything downstream: fruit straightness, disease exposure, aflow, even how easy harvesting is later. A vining cucumber given a trellis tends to have a noticeably easier life than one left to sprawl across the ground, picking up soil-borne moisture and pest exposure it wouldn't otherwise have. For our story, we're going with a vining slicing variety, trellised, since that gives us the clearest version of everything that's about to happen. Cucumbers are warm season plants, and they are not shy about letting you know it. Unlike some seeds that'll begrudgingly sprout in cool soil out of sheer stubbornness, cucumber seeds want it warm, ideally between 70 and 95 degrees Fahrenheit, with germination happening fastest right around 85. Plant them in cold soil, and you'll get one of two outcomes. Nothing happens at all, or the seed rots in the ground before it ever gets the chance to try. This is the first decision point in our cucumber's life, and it's entirely out of its control. It's whatever decision you made about timing. You can start cucumber seeds indoors about 3 to 4 weeks before your last frost date, which is honestly a bit of a gamble, because cucumbers famously hate having their roots disturbed. If you do start them indoors, use biodegradable pots that go straight into the ground later, so you're not yanking the roots out and traumatizing a plant that's already a little high maintenance about this exact thing. Or the simpler route that a lot of experienced growers actually prefer. Just direct sow the seed straight into the garden once the soil has properly warmed up, skipping the indoor drama altogether. Plant the seed about an inch deep. Within 5 to 10 days, assuming the soil cooperated, our cucumber makes its first move. A small, slightly awkward-looking seedling pushes up through the soil, and the story officially begins. Here's where most people, understandably, get a little too excited. A tiny cucumber seedling looks fragile, and it is, but it's also tougher than it looks, in the specific ways that matter. What it can't tolerate is cold. A late, Unexpected cold snap can stunt this seedling so badly that it spends the rest of its life playing catch-up, never quite reaching the size or production it would have otherwise. So if you started indoors, don't rush the transplant outside. Harden the seedling off first, gradually introducing it to outdoor sun and air over about a week, and don't move it outside permanently until nighttime temperatures are reliably staying above 55 degrees, ideally warmer. Give your seedling space. Cucumbers, depending on the variety, either sprawl along the ground covering an embarrassing amount of real estate, or climb a trellis if you give them one, which takes up far less space and, as a bonus, tend to produce straighter, cleaner fruit later. Something that's going to matter a lot in about 10 minutes of this video, so keep it in the back of your mind. Feed the soil with compost or a balanced fertilizer before planting, since cucumbers are, to put it bluntly, hungry plants. They grow fast, they fruit fast, and they will absolutely let you know if they're not getting enough nutrition, though that part of the story is still a little ways off. For now, our seedling has survived the first act. It has roots. It has true leaves. It is, by all appearances, a normal, well-behaved vegetable. This will not last. Cucumbers grow fast. Not fast for a vegetable fast, genuinely, almost alarmingly fast. Under good conditions, with consistent warmth and water, a vine can grow several inches in a single day. If you've never grown one before, this is the point where you start to suspect something's wrong, because surely a plant isn't supposed to visibly change overnight. It is. That's just what cucumbers do. And growing that fast comes at a cost. Cucumbers are genuinely hungry plants, and this is where our story needs a quick nutrition detour, because what we feed our vine right now determines a lot about how the rest of this story plays out. Early in its life, while it's mostly building leaves, stems, and root structure, our cucumber wants a fairly balanced feed, with decent nitrogen to fuel all that leafy growth everyone's about to be impressed by. But here's the shift that matters. Once flowering starts, which is coming up shortly in this story, the plant's needs change. Too much nitrogen at that point, and you get a vine that's gorgeous, sprawling, covered in dark green leaves, and stubbornly reluctant to actually flower and fruit, putting all its energy into growth instead of reproduction. Once flowers appear, shifting toward a feed higher in phosphorus and potassium relative to nitrogen supports the plant transition into actually producing fruit rather than just looking impressive. Cucumbers also appreciate a steady supply of calcium and magnesium, which support healthy fruit development and that distinctive deep green color in the leaves. A general vegetable fertilizer applied every 2 to 3 weeks, alongside a generous helping of compost worked into the soil at planting time, covers most of this without requiring an advanced chemistry degree to manage. This is also where watering becomes the single most important thing you're doing, and where it's worth pointing out something that trips people up constantly. Cucumbers need consistent moisture, not just frequent moisture. There's a difference. A cucumber vine getting watered on a random, inconsistent schedule, heavy soak, then nothing for 4 days, then another heavy soak, is going to behave very differently than one getting steady, even moisture the entire time. We'll come back to exactly why that inconsistency matters later, because it's going to directly cause one of our plant's upcoming problems. For now, just remember this. Cucumbers want roughly an inch of water a week, delivered steadily, not in dramatic, sporadic bursts. If you're growing on a trellis, this is the point where you start training the vine to climb, gently guiding it toward the support as it grows, rather than letting it figure out its own path and inevitably sprawl across your tomatoes instead. Cucumbers climb using little curling tendrils that grab onto anything nearby, which is honestly one of the more charming things about an otherwise fairly low-drama looking plant, at least low drama until the next part of the story. Worth pausing on this for a moment, because the trellis decision we made back at the start of this story is about to start paying real dividends. A trellis vine gets noticeably better airflow around its leaves than one sprawling along the ground, which matters enormously later when we get to the fungal disease section of this story. Since stagnant, humid air sitting around crowded foliage is exactly what fungal spores want. A trellis vine also keeps its developing fruit up off the soil entirely, away from soil-dwelling pests, away from the kind of constant ground moisture that encourages rot, and conveniently at eye level, which makes our future daily harvest checks considerably less of a treasure hunt through a tangle of leaves. If you've ever grown cucumbers on the ground before and ended up with a few fruits gone soft and rotten on the bottom from sitting directly on wet soil, that's specifically the problem trellising solves. Training the vine takes maybe 30 seconds every few days, just gently weaving new growth toward the support before the tendrils figure it out on their own. And it's 30 seconds that saves a lot of headaches 3 acts from now. Around 4 to 8 weeks after planting, depending on the variety and how warm your season has been, the vine reaches a milestone. It starts flowering. And this is exactly the moment our story takes its first real twist, because here's what almost nobody warns new growers about. Your cucumber vine is suddenly covered in bright yellow flowers. You did it. The hard part's over. Cucumbers are coming. They are not. Not yet. And this is the part of the cucumber's life story that causes more confused, slightly betrayed gardeners than almost anything else in this entire video. Cucumber plants produce 2 different kinds of flowers, male and female. And here's the cruel part. The plant almost always produces a wave of male flowers first, sometimes for a week or 2, before a single female flower shows up. Male flowers grow directly off a thin stem with nothing behind them. Female flowers have a small, slightly swollen bump right behind the petals. That's the unfertilized baby cucumber, waiting for pollination. If all you're seeing right now are flowers with nothing behind them, that's not a problem. That's just the plant's slightly disorganized opening act. And the only fix is patience. The female flowers are coming. They are just fashionably late. Once female flowers do show up, the next challenge begins immediately, and it's the one that causes the most actual cucumbers not cucumbering in gardens everywhere: pollination. Quick D2, because this is genuinely one of the stranger facts in the vegetable world. Cucumbers are, botanically speaking, a fruit, not a vegetable, the same way tomatoes are, since they develop from a flower and contain seeds. But here's the part that actually surprised me. Some modern cucumber varieties, called parthenocarpic varieties, have been specifically bred to produce fruit without any pollination at all. The female flower just develops into a cucumber on its own, no bees required, which also means the fruit inside has no seeds, similar to how a seedless watermelon works. These varieties exist specifically to solve the entire pollination headache we're about to walk through by simply removing the need for it. If pollination problems become a recurring frustration in your own garden, switching to a parthenocarpic variety is a legitimate way to skip this whole chapter of the story going forward. For now, though, our story is following a standard variety, which means we're doing this the old-fashioned way, with bees, timing, and a fair amount of waiting. Here's the mechanism, because understanding it makes the entire rest of this section make sense. A bee, or in some cases another pollinating insect, has to physically carry pollen from a male flower to a female flower. And it's not a one-and-done deal. Each female flower typically needs somewhere around 8 to 12 individual bee visits to fully pollinate. Not one bee, once. 8 to 12 visits. If your garden doesn't have a healthy population of pollinators buzzing around because of weather, pesticide use, or just an isolated growing spot without much flower diversity nearby, your female flowers can open, sit there hopefully for a day or 2, and then wither and drop without ever becoming anything. And here's the part of the story that explains almost every weird, misshapen cucumber anyone has ever pulled off a vine in confusion: partial pollination. If a flower gets visited by bees enough times to get fertilized, but not quite enough times to get fertilized completely and evenly, you don't get nothing. You get a cucumber that's curved, or fat on one end and skinny on the other, or has a weird pinched, nubby tip. It's not a disease. It's not something you did wrong with watering or feeding. It's simply a flower that got an incomplete delivery of pollen, and the fruit grew exactly as unevenly as the pollination that created it. This is exactly what happens to our cucumber plant. The first female flower opens. A few days pass. A small fruit starts forming behind it, but when it finally grows out, it's curved like a comma and pinched at one end. Not bitter, not dangerous, completely edible, just cosmetically a little tragic. So what do you actually do about this? If you're noticing a pattern of curved or nubbed fruit, the fix is twofold. First, attract more pollinators, planting flowering herbs like dill, borage, and zinnias near your cucumbers genuinely increases bee traffic, and avoiding pesticides in that area protects the bees you do have. Second, if you want a guaranteed fix rather than hoping the bee population improves, you can hand-pollinate. It sounds intimidating. It's genuinely not. Pick a male flower, the one with the thin stem and no bump behind it. Gently remove the petals to expose the pollen-covered center, and touch that center directly to the center of an open female flower. Do this in the morning, when flowers are freshest. That single act replaces an entire morning's worth of bee visits in about 4 seconds. Our cucumber plant, a little wiser now, starts producing straighter fruit on its next round of flowers once we start hand-pollinating a few of them just to be safe. We're not out of the woods yet, though. Coming up, a watering mistake that's about to make our hard-earned cucumbers taste like a disappointment, and then a pest that genuinely has the power to end this whole story early. A few weeks in, our vine is finally producing real, properly shaped cucumbers. Harvest time. Someone slices one open, takes a bite, and makes a face like they just bit into an aspirin. Bitter. Genuinely, unpleasantly bitter. Here's what's actually happening, and it's one of the more interesting little biochemistry stories in the vegetable world. Cucumber plants naturally produce a compound called cucurbitacin. It exists in the leaves, stems, and roots as a natural defense against pests, since it tastes awful to most things that might want to eat the plant. Under normal conditions, cucurbitacin stays where it's made and doesn't make its way into the actual fruit. But when the plant is stressed, usually from heat, or more specifically from inconsistent watering, which, you'll remember, we mentioned earlier was going to come back to bite us, the plant essentially panics a little, and that bitter compound migrates into the fruit, concentrated especially near the stem end and just beneath the skin. This is exactly what happened to our plant. Remember the watering inconsistency from earlier? A heavy soak, then a stretch of dry, hot days, then another heavy soak. That stress is precisely what triggered the cucurbitacin to creep into the fruit. It's not a disease. It's not a sign of anything dangerous. It's a stress plant doing what stress plants do. The fix going forward is exactly what you'd expect by now. Water consistently, about an inch a week, in steady intervals rather than feast or famine sessions, especially during hot stretches. Some varieties are also bred to be less prone to bitterness in general, if this becomes a recurring frustration season after season. Looking specifically for varieties labeled as low bitterness or burpless is a legitimate long-term fix, not a cop-out. And if you've already got a bitter cucumber in hand and don't want to waste it, there's an old trick that genuinely works reasonably well. Cut off both ends, then rub the cut ends together in a circular motion against the cucumber itself. It sounds borderline witchcraft, but the friction draws out a surprising amount of the surface cucurbitacin, which is concentrated right near that stem end anyway. It won't make a severely bitter cucumber taste perfect, but it meaningfully takes the edge off a mildly bitter one. Our cucumber plant, now properly watered on a consistent schedule, settles into a happy rhythm, and just when things are going well, the story's biggest threat shows up. Small, yellow-green, striped insects show up on the leaves. Striped cucumber beetles. On their own, they're a nuisance. They nibble on leaves and occasionally scar the fruit, annoying but rarely fatal in small numbers. Here's the actual problem, and it's the single most serious thing that can happen in this entire cucumber story. Striped cucumber beetles carry and transmit a bacterium that causes bacterial wilt. And bacterial wilt is, without exaggeration, one of the fastest plant killers in the entire vegetable garden. Here's how it actually works, mechanically, because understanding the mechanism is what helps you catch it in time. The beetle feeds on the plant, and in the process, introduces the bacterium into the plant's vascular system, the internal plumbing that moves water from the roots up through the stems and leaves. Once inside, the bacterium multiplies rapidly and physically clogs that plumbing. The plant can no longer move water upward, no matter how much you give it. A single vine typically wilts first, often noticeably in the cooler morning hours before bouncing back slightly as the day warms. And then, within days, it doesn't bounce back at all. It collapses completely. There's a genuinely useful diagnostic test here. The same kind of trick that works on related plants like peppers and tomatoes. Cut through a wilting stem near the base and slowly pull the two cut ends apart. If you see thin, sticky, almost stringy threads of bacterial ooze connecting the two pieces as you pull them apart, that confirms bacterial wilt. Unfortunately, once a plant has this, there is no cure. The infected vine needs to be removed entirely to prevent the beetle from spreading the bacterium to anything nearby. This is the genuine moment of tension in our cucumber story. Does it make it, or doesn't it? Prevention is everything here, because treatment essentially doesn't exist. Row covers or fine mesh netting over young plants, removed once flowering starts so pollinators can get in. Keep the beetles off during the most vulnerable early stage. Yellow sticky traps placed just above the plants exploit the beetle's specific attraction to yellow and catch a meaningful number of them before they ever reach the leaves. And simply checking your plants regularly for the beetles themselves, small, distinct, easy to spot if you're actually looking, lets you remove them by hand before any bacterium transfer even has a chance to happen. In our story, because we were checking the vine regularly and caught the beetles early, hand removing them before any wilting symptoms ever showed up, our cucumber plant survives this chapter completely unscathed. Not every story ends this way. This disease is genuinely the reason some cucumber harvests end abruptly in the middle of summer with no warning. But vigilance early in the season is what separates a vine that makes it through from one that doesn't. With the beetle threat handled, one more challenge waits in the wings before we get to the part everyone's been waiting for. Actually, two more challenges, because gardens are rarely as tidy as a 3-act structure would suggest. The first shows up as small, water-soaked yellow spots on the leaves, which over time develop into pitted, brown lesions, sometimes accompanied by new growth that looks oddly curled or distorted. This is anthracnose, a fungal disease that, unlike the bacterial wilt we just survived, doesn't typically kill the plant outright, but it does spread to the stems and even the fruit if left unchecked. And it's stubborn, since the fungus can survive in garden soil for years, waiting for the next cucumber season to start the whole cycle over again. The prevention here is mostly about discipline rather than any single dramatic fix. Rotating where you plant cucumbers and their relatives, squash, melons, pumpkins, every couple of years rather than planting in the exact same soil season after season. Watering at the base of the plant rather than overhead to avoid splashing fungal spores from the soil onto healthy leaves. And choosing resistant varieties if anthracnose has been a recurring problem in your specific garden before. Our plant picks up a few early spots on its lower, older leaves, gets those removed promptly, and avoids it spreading any further. Mostly because we caught it early rather than because we did anything particularly heroic. As summer stretches on, warm days start giving way to cooler nights, and that exact shift in temperature is precisely the condition that powdery mildew thrives in. Cucumbers, more than almost any other common garden vegetable, are spectacularly good at catching this fungal disease, mostly because their broad, flat leaves create an enormous surface area for spores to land on and spread across. You'll know it when you see it, a white, powdery coating, almost like the leaves got dusted with flour, starting on the older leaves and spreading from there. Unlike a lot of fungal diseases that need wet conditions to spread, powdery mildew doesn't particularly care whether it's been raining, it spreads just fine in dry conditions too, as long as the humidity and temperature swing is right. The good news, powdery mildew rarely kills the fruit directly, and it rarely kills the whole plant outright either. The bad news, it does reduce the leaf's ability to photosynthesize, which means fewer, smaller cucumbers going forward, and the exposed fruit, with less leaf cover shielding it, can also pick up sun scald, a rough, unappealing patch on the skin for direct sun exposure it wasn't getting before the leaves thinned out. The fix is mostly about prevention through spacing and airflow, giving plants enough room that air actually moves between them, rather than sitting in a stagnant, humid little pocket, along with removing the worst affected leaves promptly rather than letting them sit there spreading spores to their healthier neighbors. If it gets bad enough, an approved organic fungicide can slow it down. Though by the time powdery mildew shows up, it's usually late enough in the season that just pushing through to the end of the harvest, rather than trying to fully cure it, is the more realistic goal. Worth a quick mention here too, since it tends to show up around the same hot, dry stretches that bring on bitterness and mildew alike, spider mites. They are genuinely tiny, easy to miss with the naked eye, but they leave behind a telltale stippled, almost dusty speckling on the leaves, and in bad infestations, fine webbing between leaves and stems. A strong, direct spray of water on the undersides of the leaves, repeated every few days, disrupts their population surprisingly well without needing anything stronger, since spider mites in particular thrive in dry, dusty conditions and genuinely dislike being regularly hosed down. Our plant picks up a mild case late in its life, a few dusty leaves near the base, but by this point, it's already produced most of what it's going to produce for the season, so the impact is minor. Which brings us, finally, to the part of this story everyone's actually been waiting for. Here's something that surprises a lot of new growers. Cucumbers go from perfectly ready to noticeably overripe shockingly fast, sometimes within 48 hours during peak summer heat. This isn't a plant that rewards patience the way a tomato does. A cucumber left too long on the vine doesn't get better. It gets larger, paler, often a little bitter from age-related stress, and the seeds inside get tough and unpleasant. So check your vine daily once fruit starts developing seriously, and harvest based on size for your specific variety. Most slicing cucumbers are ready somewhere between 6 and 8 inches, pickling varieties usually smaller, rather than waiting for some vague sense that it's probably ready. If the skin starts turning yellow, you've already waited too long. That's an overripe cucumber announcing itself. Here's a detail that actually matters for the rest of the season, not just this one harvest. Picking mature cucumbers promptly signals the vine to keep producing new flowers. A cucumber left hanging on the vine past its prime essentially tells the plant, "We have enough, you can stop now," and flower production slows down in response. Daily harvesting, even when it feels excessive, is what keeps a healthy vine producing continuously rather than tapering off early. Worth knowing too, since it's the kind of thing that genuinely extends this story well past where most people assume it ends. A single cucumber vine, even a healthy, well-cared-for one, has a productive lifespan of roughly 8 to 10 weeks of heavy fruiting before yields naturally start declining, partly from the cumulative stress of disease pressure we've spent half this video discussing, and partly just from the plant's own biological clock running down. Many experienced growers handle this not by trying to nurse one aging vine through an entire summer, but by succession planting, starting a second round of seeds 3 to 4 weeks after the first, so that just as the original vine starts winding down, a fresh one is ramping up to take over. If your growing season is long enough to support it, this is genuinely one of the simplest ways to turn a single burst of cucumbers into a steady, months-long supply instead. To harvest, snip the stem with scissors or a knife rather than twisting or pulling, since cucumber vines are surprisingly easy to damage with a rough yank, and a damaged vine produces less for the rest of the season. For storage, cucumbers are happiest in the refrigerator, ideally in a perforated bag, and they'll typically stay crisp for about a week. They don't freeze or store long-term particularly well in their raw form. Which brings our story back around to that decision we made right at the very beginning, slicing variety or pickling variety, because this is the moment it actually pays off. If you went with a pickling variety, or even just have more slicing cucumbers than you can realistically eat fresh, which happens to almost everyone who's ever grown a healthy, productive vine, this is exactly where pickling earns its reputation as the time-honored solution to cucumber overabundance. A basic quick refrigerator pickle doesn't require any special canning equipment at all. Just a brine of vinegar, water, salt, and whatever else you'd like to flavor it with, dill and garlic being the classic choice, poured over sliced cucumbers and left to sit in the fridge for at least a day. It won't have the long shelf-stable life of a properly canned, water bath processed pickle, but it'll easily keep for a few weeks refrigerated, which is usually more than enough time to work through a surplus. If you genuinely want shelf-stable jars that last on a pantry shelf for a year or more, that requires proper canning technique, with sterilized jars and a water bath or pressure canning process, which is genuinely worth learning if cucumbers become a recurring part of your garden. But it's a separate skill from the growing itself, and not something we're going to cover in depth here. The short version: refrigerator pickles for a quick fix on this week's harvest. Proper canning of cucumbers are about to become a yearly tradition in your kitchen. Either way, the lesson by the end of a cucumber season is usually the same one every experienced grower eventually learns. Plant fewer vines than you think you need, because even one healthy, well-pollinated, disease-free cucumber vine, trellised and fed properly, will produce more than most households can eat fresh, and you'll be looking at brine recipes by the third week of harvest whether you plan to or not. One more thing worth tucking away for next season, since it touches on almost every challenge our cucumber just survived. What you plant around a cucumber vine genuinely changes its odds. We already mentioned dill, borage, and zinnias for attracting pollinators, which directly solves the curved fruit problem from earlier in this story. Radishes planted around the base of young cucumber plants have a real, documented effect of deterring cucumber beetles, specifically the exact pest responsible for our bacterial wilt scare, since the radish pungent scent seems to genuinely confuse or repel the beetles before they ever reach the cucumber leaves. Nasturtiums work similarly as a trap crop, drawing aphids and certain beetles toward themselves and away from the main event. What's worth avoiding, on the other hand, is planting cucumbers too close to potatoes, since both are susceptible to overlapping fungal pressures in damp conditions, or near aromatic herbs like sage, whose strong oils can actually inhibit cucumber growth at close range, which runs counter to the usual companion planting assumption that more herbs nearby is always better. Not every pairing helps, and the ones that genuinely do tend to be solving a specific, identifiable problem, exactly the kind of problems our particular cucumber ran into along the way, rather than just being a nice idea repeated without much evidence behind it. One last variation on our story worth mentioning. For anyone working with limited space rather than an open garden bed, cucumbers, particularly bush varieties or compact vining types grown on a small trellis, do genuinely well in containers. A pot in the 5-gallon range at minimum, with real drainage holes, gives a cucumber plant enough root space to support the kind of fast growth we talked about earlier in this story. Though container-grown cucumbers will need watering more frequently than their in-ground counterparts, since pots dry out considerably faster, especially during the same hot stretches that caused our bitterness scare in the first place. If anything, the watering consistency lesson from earlier in this story matters even more in a container, since there's less soil volume to buffer against sudden dry spells. The trade-off is that a container-grown vine will generally produce a smaller total harvest than the same variety, given an entire garden bed and an unrestricted trellis to climb, simply because there's less root space to support unlimited growth. But for a balcony, a patio, or anyone without a dedicated garden plot, it's a genuinely workable version of this exact same story, just on a smaller stage. Position the container somewhere it'll get at least 6 hours of direct sun. Set up even a small trellis or stake for the vine to climb, and everything else in this story, the flowering confusion, the pollination math, the bitterness risk, the beetle vigilance, applies just as much to a container plant as it does to one sprawling across an entire garden bed. So that's the full story. A seed that needed warmth to even get started, a vine that grew faster than seemed physically reasonable, a wave of flowers that lied about being ready, a pollination crisis that explained every weird curved cucumber you've ever side-eyed at the grocery store, a bitterness scare that traced back to one inconsistent watering week, a genuine brush with the most dangerous disease in the cucumber world, a dusting of mildew that showed up right on schedule, and finally, a harvest that rewards you specifically for checking on it constantly rather than leaving it alone. If you've made it this far, you clearly want more than just a passing relationship with your garden. Subscribe, because we've got the rest of this season's crops still ahead of us, and every single one has a story just as messy as this. Next time, we're doing this same complete breakdown for potatoes, and unlike this cucumber, that entire story happens somewhere you can't see it until the very end.